The Pokemon trading card game standard format will be rotating on April the 5th of 2025. This is going to be a massive shift in the cards that are able to be played, and the best decks in the format are going to drastically change. Today we're going to be taking a look at the cards we're losing to rotation with the regulation mark F. The cards consist of Brilliant Stars through Crown Zenith. We're going to start with Brilliant Stars. We're going to take a look at the noteworthy cards inside of Brilliant Stars that we're losing today. Starting with Entei. Entei, just a very strong 230 HP attacker, has fleet-footed, draws one card for you, has been really a go-to card with Terapagos and Area Zero Underdepths being released. Very, very strong card. 3 retreat cost wasn't always great. That's kind of what held it back, but I've actually been having a lot of fun playing a Turbo Teal Mask Ogrepon Entei deck, so that's going to definitely be missed. One of the biggest cards we're losing to rotation is Luminion V. Almost every single deck plays Luminion V with its ability Luminous Sign that allows you to search for a supporter card from your deck, just allows you to set up, allows you to do basically whatever you want on your turn if you're able to play it. You could also recycle it and then play it again for additional draw support. Cannot overstate how crazy of a loss losing Luminion V is. They're definitely going to have to replace it with something in the near future. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that card comes out. The next card that we are going to be losing is Manaphy. Losing bench protection is a pretty big deal. I know that we're going to be losing Radiant Greninja, one of the biggest bench snipers, but just having bench protection helps you in so many matchups. Being able to protect your low HP Pokemon and your opponent from targeting down your support Pokemon is so valuable. Rabsca is not it. You having to evolve to be able to protect your bench is just not the way to go. Hopefully they release something similar to Manaphy or like the old Mew card that protects our bench. We're definitely going to need it going forward. Another couple cards we lose from the Miraidon deck, we were losing Raichu V and Raikou V. Both of those came out in Brilliant Stars. Raikou V has been a huge attacker with the introduction of Area Zero Underdepths with its ability Fleet-footed, similar to Entei. Raichu V has been the answer to cards such as Charizard EX with massive, 300 plus HP. Being able to use the Dynamic Spark attack to be able to do 60 damage per energy just absolutely blows up your opponent's active Pokemon. Those are pretty big losses. Duskull's rotating. We do have a new Duskull. Technically, this is the optimal Duskull from Brilliant Stars is the one that most people use. We are losing that, but we do have one in the format still. Losing Bibarel is actually a pretty big deal. Whenever I was thinking about all the stuff we're going to be losing to rotation, I was like, well, we could just replace it with Bibarel. And then I'm like, no, wait, we're losing Bibarel too. So we can't replace draw supports with Bibarel. Industrious Incisors, draw up until you have 5 cards in hand, is just so powerful. I kind of wish Bibarel was staying for the next format. It would be really nice to be able to have, the setup draw power on your bench. Losing Arceus V and V-Star is a pretty big deal as well. Those were kind of the mascots for the Brilliant Stars set. Trinity Nova, just a powerful attack, 3 colorless energy. You would use your double turbo and whatever attacker you're using for the deck. You could use fire, water, dark. There were so many different archetypes you could use for Arceus V-Star. The last day 2 that I made was with an Arceus V-Star deck featuring fire Pokemon with like a Radiant Heatran. It's a very powerful card. Starbirth, V-Star power to be able to search for 2 cards was absolutely broken. Really did help with setups. The power creep did kind of push it out towards the end of this format, but whenever it first released and throughout the duration, honestly, of the standard format that it was in, it was a powerhouse you really had to respect, and it just made so many decks viable. If you weren't sure how to accelerate energy to a certain deck or archetype, you just throw an Arceus V-Star in there, use the Trinity Nova, and that's how you would power things up. And that's really honestly a big loss to the format. Being able to have, like a general coverage card like Arceus really helped us, explore different decks, be able to play fun new decks that just wouldn't be able to work without Trinity Nova and Starbirth. We're losing the Minccino. This is like the optimal Minccino. Call for Family. Only has 60 HP, so with Dragapult, wasn't really played a whole lot. You did want to have that 70 HP, but the 60 HP Minccino did have Call for Family, so I would say that was the more optimal one without Dragapult in the format. Some of the supporter trainer cards we're actually losing Charon's Care. Pretty big deal. Whenever you want to build a colorless deck, you always look at using Charon's Care to be able to prevent your opponent from taking prize cards. It's not a huge loss, but it definitely hurts the colorless archetypes whenever you want to play them. We're losing Collapse Stadium. Collapse Stadium is a card that I like to play, like in Charizard. Basically, any deck that played multiple V Pokemon or multiple support Pokemon, you wanted to be able to discard those. Collapse Stadium was so strong. With Area Zero Underdepths, so powerful. in that format. Being able to push your opponent from 8 Pokemon on their bench down to 4 could just cripple them where they wouldn't be able to play. We're also losing Cynthia's Ambition. This was one of my favorite cards for decks like Zorobox and other small HP decks. You would draw 5 cards into your hand. If any of your Pokemon were knocked out, you would draw 8 cards. Seeing up to 8 cards is absurd. There's a reason why they've never gone past 7 with Professor's research. Seeing 8 cards if you had a 0-card hands could sometimes win you a game. We're losing Magma Basin, just a staple in fire decks. I used Magma Basin in my Arceus, Radiant Heat Train fire deck, was very, very strong in that. Very strong in Gouging Fire decks. Just a pretty big loss to fire decks overall. One of the most powerful cards in the fire archetypes. We're losing Roseanne's Backup and Team Yelchir. Those are pretty significant cards to be losing to rotation, but they're not too crazy to where we're gonna, most people aren't gonna notice that these cards are gone. Team Yelchir was mainly used in Snorlax, which we're also losing. Fantastic big win on that. I'm super excited for Snorlax to be gone. One of the biggest losses is actually going to be Double Turbo Energy. This is our only, double colorless, double turbo energy. Provides 2 colorless energies that we have in the format. You won't be able to attack with Terapagos with a single energy attachment any longer. I have a feeling they'll release double colorless or something similar to double turbo in future sets to replace it, but for the time being, it's going to be really hard to use Terapagos without using something like Glass Trumpet. Big significant loss to the Terapagos archetype especially. It hurts really popular decks right now like Cloth as well. Just being able to attack with a single energy attachment, even though it did reduce your attack by 20, was so strong. Let's move on to Astral Radiance. There's not really any more noteworthy cards out Brilliant Stars. Let's go ahead and move on to Astral Radiance. One of the coolest cards we're losing is Radiant Heatran. Like I mentioned before, that is the last time I day 2'd a big regional event. I was using Radiant Heatran in an Arceus deck. A lot of fun. It was very, very fun to play. Kind of sad we're losing that. We're also losing Origin Form Palkia V and V-Star. Very powerful card. I don't think people understand how useful this card is in the current meta. Certain decks such as Ceruledge and Chien Pao and really anything that wants to play like Radiant Greninja is just going to have a bad time. Accelerating 3 energy with the V-Star power, super strong. Big strong attack, Subspace Swell with the introduction of Area 0 Underdepths only became more powerful. It could do over 300 damage with ease with Subspace Swell. That only took 2 energies to be able to attack with. Very, very strong card. And probably the biggest loss from this entire rotation, Radiant Greninja. Radiant Greninja is probably in the top 5 most powerful cards of all time. Concealed cards, discard an energy, draw 2 is the staple in so many decks. Look at your deck list. Look at the decks you have built right now. How many of them have a Radiant Greninja on the inside? Probably all of them. I can't think of a single deck that I've used recently that does not have a Radiant Greninja on the inside. My current favorite deck is the Regis, which is also leaving, but that has a Radiant Greninja. Just everything can use Radiant Greninja. Moonlight Shuriken, absolutely busted attack. I mean, I can't overstate how big of a loss Radiant Greninja is and how it's going to affect deck building moving forward. It's going to make almost every single deck less consistent. We're losing Luxray V and Regieleki. Don't like to see those cards. A lot of control type decks use those. I'm not a big fan of control style decks, to be honest. Losing Darkrai V and V-Star, not super significant, but Darkrai V-Star's ability to be able to get back 2 items was pretty significant in dark decks like Roaring Moon EX whenever you wanted to use them. So losing that, I mean, that probably could have been a really good draw engine if we still had it, but the V-Stars, all the V Pokemon, they're all going away, which is going to really slow down the format in my opinion. And Darkrai V-Star is a big example of that, where it's a turbo style ability that allows you to pull back items to further your setup and your board state. Along with Regieleki, we're also losing, just basically all the Regis. We're losing Registeel, we're losing Regigigas. Regigigas is so fun to play. The last League Cup that I won was with Regigigas, Pikachu EX, and Area 0 Underdepths. I'm kind of sad we're losing Regigigas. Before Regigigas, Zorobox was my favorite deck. When Zorobox rotated, Regigigas became my favorite deck. Now we're losing that as well. We're going to have to move on to a new favorite deck. Could be United Wings, maybe. United Wings could be good. We are losing the Ditto with sudden transformation. We're losing so many good cards, but we're losing the Ditto with sudden transformation. So that's a pretty big deal for United Wings. That was a very, very strong attacker. We're losing the 70 HP Ralts, the optimal Ralts with teleportation burst with the 70 HP, very significant against decks such as Dragapult. Wow, we're losing so many cards. Decks are going to change so much. If you guys want me to make a video about how decks are going to change, let me know down in the comments. Pretty big card that we're losing, Origin Form Dialga V-Star. That's actually been catching on pretty heavily right now with like Archaludon. Dialga V-Star actually won a regional tournament. Andrew Hedrick won it with just regular Dialga V-Star and the Matang line. So very, very significant loss. Archaludon's not going to be as powerful as it was. Oh, Regigigas. It caught so many people off guard because you used to only be able to use Ancient Wisdom, the ability, one time because you could only fit one Regigigas on your board because you needed all 6, and you could use it twice. It's busted, absolutely busted, especially with Radiant Greninja. We're losing Oranguru V. That's been kind of coming back into the format a little bit with Cloth. Being able to find 2 tool cards out of your deck is pretty significant when you need one to be able to poison your Pokemon. Weirdeer Veer's going. Lugia V-Star, Sayonara. Glad that's going. Pretty big card that we're losing. Canceling Cologne. I'm kind of worried about losing Canceling Cologne more than a lot of these like items and trainer cards. We don't really have a way to deal with things such as Cornerstone Ogerpon without building your deck a different way. We don't really have a way to deal with those type of abilities like the Sylveon that's coming out. The Ogerpons, just decks that can wall you out with their abilities. We're not going to have Canceling Cologne to be able to deal with those anymore. So we may have to adjust how we're building our decks to even be able to play in this new format. Canceling Cologne, massive, massive loss. We're losing Silene, mainly just played by control style decks. That's a big loss for them. Being able to put back 2 cards into their deck if they flip heads on both of their coin flips is a pretty big deal. It's going to make those less consistent overall. Losing things like Rotom, going to make everything so inconsistent for, stall type decks, bird control style decks. They're going to struggle. Dark Patch. It's been a long time since we haven't had Dark Patch in the format. I can't remember the last time Dark Patch was out of the format. It's a big loss to Dark type decks. Really unfortunate to see that go, but there's a good chance that it will be back. Like I said, Dark Patch has been in the format for a very, very long time. It's very vital for, Dark type decks. Just, kind of a staple for Dark decks. I'm sure that will be back. Energy Lotto. Kind of a cool card to have. You look at 7 cards, you can find an energy there. Not super played, but the decks it is played in are going to definitely miss it because finding energy can be a struggle for some decks. Losing Featherball to find Pidgeot was a pretty good strategy for a while. That's a big loss. We're losing Hisuian Heavy Ball. We don't really have a way to look at our prizes without doing a full deck prize check anymore. So Heavy Ball not being able to pull out your one of Pheasantipity is kind of be a big deal in the next format. Pretty big loss there. I'm sure we'll have something to replace Hisuian Heavy Ball to be able to look at our prizes or get basic Pokemon out. If we don't, that would be really unfortunate. Having certain cards trapped in the prizes can win or lose you a game, honestly. Irida, we're losing Irida. Irida's not a super big deal. Losing Radiant Greninja is the reason why losing Irida is not a big deal. Most of the time when you would play Irida, it would be to find cards like Radiant Greninja, Origin Form Palkia, and used for Chi and Pao, to find the Baxcaliburs as well. But Irida, not a super big loss. It is a pretty significant card in water type decks, but the biggest water decks that use Radiant Greninja will not have that available to them anymore. So it's not a significant deal because most decks have just stopped playing Irida in favor of cards like Arven, for instance. Another card we're losing, Roxanne. Man, we are losing a lot of stuff from Astral Radiance. A lot of good cards in Astral Radiance. Roxanne, just a really good disruption card. Your opponent goes down to 3 prizes. You use Roxanne, you get 6, they get 2. Just speaks for itself. It's kind of like using Unfair Stamp, but you get more cards and they get the same amount. Losing Switch Cart, pretty big deal. Most of the big basic decks, Raging Bolt, Roaring Moon, anything that really is just a basic only deck wants to use Switch Cart because healing is so important versus Dragapult right now. That's a pretty significant loss. Switch Cart was a staple in so many decks. Lost Box, which we're losing Lost Box. We're losing everything, man. Temple of Sinnoh, another stadium card we're losing. Not super significant because we are losing Lugia V-Star. It's mainly it feels like Temple of Sinnoh was printed specifically to combat Lugia V-Star. Trekking shoes is a big deal. I love trekking shoes. Being able to make it seem like you have essentially a 56 card deck by using trekking shoes in your deck, you just automatically get that +1. And if you don't like the card, you can look at another card. Just super, super strong in turbo decks. This is one of the big reasons why the format will be slowing down. We're losing a lot of archetypes out of Astral Radiance. We're losing Palkia V-Star. We're losing Dialga V-Star. We're losing the Reggies. We're losing a lot of really, prominent archetypes out of Astral Radiance. I didn't really think about how powerful of a set Astral Radiance was until just now, to be honest. Pokemon Go as a set changed the way we build our decks so much. So much. Radiant Charizard as a single prize attacker to offset the prize trade against decks like Raging Bolt and other like big basic decks. So strong, so strong. Charizard EX is going to miss Radiant Charizard. You're just going to have to hope they can't knock out your Charizard EX with Charizard decks now. I mean, Radiant Charizard was the win condition for so many decks. Just Radiant Charizard going is a big deal. It's not as big a deal as Radiant Greninja, but Radiant Charizard is definitely the second strongest Radiant Pokemon that we will be losing. Another cool card we're losing Slowbro. That was one of my favorite cards inside of Zorobox whenever it was in the standard format. Just take 2 prizes out of nowhere. Just a lot of fun. We're losing Zapdos. That's a big deal for Miraidon. Being able to hit for 230 damage with its symbol ability that increases your damage by 10 is a big deal. Most of the basic EX Pokemon do have 230 HP. So losing that additional damage is a pretty big deal for Miraidon. Miraidon's losing a lot of cards. It may just kind of go by the wayside. Losing Forest Sealstone, losing Raikou. Miraidon's losing so much. We're losing the Sudden Transformation Ditto, which would be really strong in United Wings with Regidrago V-Star rotating. United Wings could have been really, really strong if it still had the Ditto card. It might still be really strong, but Ditto would have definitely helped a lot in that deck. Snorlax stall gone. Finally. This... if you've been around for a couple of years with this card in the format, I'm glad it's gone. I'm glad it's gone. I hope they don't print anything like it for a while. I hope we can go an entire format without any sort of block lax. This wasn't even the first printing of block lax, so there's a good chance they'll bring it back in the future. But just give us a format without block lax, please. Pokestop. Pokestop is such a hyper-aggressive stadium card that so many decks use. So many decks use Pokestop. It's such a powerful card to be able to pull out item cards. Losing Pokestop is a big deal. Pokestop just helps every deck that plays a heavy amount of items. Most turbo decks that run Pokestop, they just love to hit that Pokestop, get their energy switch, get their Buddy Puffin, get their Nest Ball. You just get whatever they need for the turn. With Pokestop, just absolutely broken card. Honestly, on the verge of being too powerful of a stadium card. Even though both players can use it, most of the time the person who puts it in their deck can utilize it, and the person who doesn't have it in their deck, they don't want to hit it because then they just mill all their best cards. That's what happens with me. I mill all my Iono, my Boss's Orders, all my evolutions. Just not having a good time whenever I use Pokestop. But small set, very, very small, Pokemon Go set. Radiant Charizard, Zapdos, Snorlax, Ditto, Pokestop, pretty significant cards for the time that they were in the standard format. Going on to Lost Origin. Lost Origin is interesting because this is where we were introduced to Comfey and the Lost Zone engine. We're losing the entire Lost Zone engine. We're losing Comfey. We're losing Cramorant. We're losing Mirage Gate. We're losing Lost Vacuum, which is huge. We don't really have a lot of tool removal except for Jamming Tower, but then they could just bump the stadium and then they have their tools back. So hopefully we see something like Hyper Blower come back or Lost Vacuum. But Cramorant, we're losing pretty significant there. Rotom V was in Lost Origin. How many decks right now play Rotom V? Just being able to use Rotom V's ability to be able to instant charge for 3, absolutely broken. Actually, it was a pretty cool deck to play. I actually played a Rotom V-Star deck at a League Cup one time and had a lot of fun with it. Not a good meta deck, but it could do a lot of damage. Sableye was a menace. This disgustingly powerful, so game warping, so meta warping that I just... Sableye, Snorlax, some of the two of the scariest cards, two of the most, disliked cards in the entire format. Drapion V is interesting. When Mew V Max was at its height of power, Drapion V was a pretty significant card. We won't have Cresselia inside of our Gardevoir decks anymore. Gardevoir's losing a lot of stuff, actually. It could be kind of wraps on Gardevoir for a while until they make some new sets and they print some new cards. We're losing Radiant Hisuian Stealer, which is a big deal for Cloth. Increase that poison damage, pretty significant right now in the current format. Losing that. Giratina V-Star in its heyday, won tons of regional tournaments, was very, very powerful. Just along with Goodra V-Star, another super powerful deck, won some regionals. Pidgeot V, very significant. A lot of mill decks like Great Tusk like to have Pidgeot V so they don't deck out themselves. Losing that's a pretty big deal. Snorlax, this is the 180 damage attack one in Lost Origin, pretty big deal. Zoroark V-Star, very, very powerful right now with a double turbo energy and Area 0 underdepths. We're losing Bouffalant, which was used in a lot of like Pidgeot control decks, the Lost Headbutt attack, where it would Lost Zone your energy. That's kind of toxic, to be honest. Colress's Experiment. Some decks like to use Colress. Look at 5, you'll keep 3 and Lost Zone 2. Pretty significant loss. Just the whole Lost Zone engine archetype is just gone. Lost City is a pretty big deal. Just whenever your opponent's playing like a one-of card, being able to play Lost City and get rid of that one attacker. It was really strong for like Radiance. That was probably why they made it, to be able to get rid of your opponent's Radiant, one-of Pokemon. But it does help in matches like Gardevoir to get rid of their one-of, Drifloon. That's their main attacker. Lost Vacuum. I can't overstate how big of a deal losing Lost Vacuum is. We have to have some sort of tool removal outside of Jamming Tower in the format. I really hope they print something in the next upcoming set similar to Lost Vacuum to help with that. Mirage Gate's gone, the whole Lost Zone engine gone. Misfortune Sisters, pretty significant. A lot of control style decks do like to use Misfortune Sisters to be able to discard item cards. Panic Mask is a cool card. It prevents damage if you have 40 HP or less. Will be significant for some EX Pokemon like Serena. Thornton's a pretty big deal. You could transform, your basic Pokemon on the bench to something like a Charmander if your Charizard gets knocked out to be able to rare candy. Pretty significant loss there. Gift Energy is probably one of the only 2 special energies that we're losing that's relevant. Double Turbo and Gift Energy. The rest of the special energies in the format right now don't really matter because they learned their lesson. Lugia V-Star is disgustingly broken whenever it has good special energy, so they just didn't print any for a while. Hisuian Electrode V, we're losing. That's a pretty big deal for cloth decks as well. Delphox V, pretty good in, fire type decks with magical fire. Rotom V is definitely the biggest card from Lost Origin that we're losing. Not a significant amount of cards out of Lost Origin outside of Rotom and Lost Vacuum, but still very, very impactful losses to the standard format. All right, moving on to Silver Tempest. Silver Tempest is basically dominating the standard format right now. Regidrago V-Star is the best deck in the format with Teomas Gogurpon, Kyurem, just by far the best deck in the format. Lugia V-Star was the best deck in the format for a very long time. Whenever it first came out, Lugia V-Star Archeops probably in the running for like the most powerful deck of all time, up there with things like Mew VMAX. We're losing a lot of stuff from Silver Tempest. Radiant Alakazam is a big deal for Dragapult decks. We're losing the draw engine of Kirlia. Refinement, discard 1, draw 2 is a massive loss for Gardevoir and might be what cripples that deck for a while. Regidrago V-Star, so strong. I won a few League Cups with Regidrago V-Star, so I was definitely part of the problem. We're losing Capturing Aroma, another Pokemon Search card. We're going to be down to like Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, and Dusk Ball. Yeah, not a lot of Pokemon Search in the format, to be honest. Forest, Seal, Stone leaving the format is a massive deal. Forest, Seal, Stone makes so many decks work. Think about the decks in the format right now that you play against or you might be playing. How many of them play like 1 or 2 V Pokemon with a Forest, Seal, Stone as part of the setup? Miraidon, Charizard, just any deck that can use like a Rotom for draw power to be able to just toss in a Forest, Seal, Stone is disgustingly broken, and I'm so glad this card is gone. It's going to cripple so many setup decks that just rely on going fast. Glad that card is going. Not a lot of cards from Silver Tempest, but they're very significant losses. Regidrago V-Star, Lugia V-Star, Forest, Seal, Stone, and the Refinement Kirlia are like meta-defining, current, powerhouse decks that we are all using and playing against right now that will be gone April the 5th. Crown Zenith, going into Crown Zenith. Crown Zenith was just kind of like a reprint set. It just had the same cards from the previous sets that we talked about. The biggest losses being Radiant Charizard, Rotom V, Bidoof, the Regis, Trekking Shoes. Just all of those cards were mainly reprints. Kind of funny is we got a reprint of the Choice Belt. There's not going to be any V Pokemon, but you can still play Choice Belt. It's kind of funny. Those are all the noteworthy losses from the upcoming standard format rotation. Let me know down in the comments which card you are going to miss the most. Make sure you check out this video right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.